Chapter 1979. What Identity? Chapter 1979. What Identity? The soul-calming bell flew back, faint cracks appearing on it. Blood flowed from the corner of the Runhuang's mouth. The Runhuang, who was a vast distance away from Yi Futian, glanced into the distance as he retracted his divine wheel of the great path. He sighed inside. It seemed that this person was undefeatable. He could not handle Yi Futian. The Runhuang stepped back, not continuing to battle. Instead, the Runhuang did not say anything and retreated behind Yin Dongyang, the prince of Great Yin ancient royal family. There was also a person to Yin Dongyang's left. The person's aura was rich and powerful. At the peak of the middle-level Runhuang plane, a mighty aura of the great path surged from his body. "Your Highness, Runhuang Tung will most likely need to attack," said the person. Runhuang Tung was called Yin Tung. He, too, was a member of the Great Yin ancient royal family. He was not from the main family line, but his ability was terrifying, and his combat ability was extraordinary. Yin Dongyang did not respond. He swept a glance at Yi Futian from afar. There had not been a truly incredible figure from Wangshan Watchtower until now. At least not one that Yin Dongyang recognized as truly incredible. Could it be that the Watchtower wanted Yi Futian to be his opponent? Yin Dongyang knew the ability of Yin Tung clearly. Yin Tung had a flawless divine wheel of the great path at the lower-level Runhuang plane, but could not maintain it after breaking through to the next plane. However, this did not hinder his powerful combat ability, together with his 6th-tier cultivation being higher than that of Yi Futian. If Yin Tung were to attack, he indeed had a chance of defeating Yi Futian. Right then, more people came charging over towards Yin Dongyang. This time, Yin Dongyang did not move at all. With a flash from Yin Tung's figure, a pure-blooded dragon appeared in the sky. The gigantic dragon that stretched for miles pierced through the clouds. It let out a dragon cry that shook the sky. Yin Tung grabbed out at the air with his hand. The pure-blooded dragon roared angrily. Its roars caused the souls of those present to tremble. At the same time, an overbearing attack immediately ripped apart the great path, as it charged towards the other party, followed by a loud rumble. It sent the attacking cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower flying from the shockwaves. "Song of the Yin Dragon," exclaimed the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower, as they glanced over where the other party was. Song of the Yin Dragon could also attack one's spiritual soul, besides already possessing extremely frightening attack power. Rumor had it that, with this technique, the ancestor of the Great Yin ancient royal family had emerged from Swallow Mountain and established his name, becoming a giant figure. Of course, this was only one of the techniques of the Great Yin ancient royal family. As a superpower that conquered countless lands in the Yin continent, Great Yin ancient royal family was undoubtedly the most powerful force in the northern land. He has the aura of the Dragon Emperor. "This fellow is also a member of Great Yin ancient royal family," commented Lin Xiao as he glanced over at the other party. When Yin Ting attacked, a golden current of qi appeared all around them, becoming the shadow of an enormous pure-blooded dragon. It enveloped the space, and the aura of the royal family emanated from it, as though it belonged to the royal family of divine dragons. This made Lin Xiao realize that the other party was also a part of the royal family. On the other hand, Yi Futian did not think much about it. He would be facing the cultivators of the Great Yin ancient royal family sooner or later. This time, Goddess Donglai had sent him here to train in preparation for the future. He had never imagined that he would encounter the Great Yin ancient royal family so soon. As for Yin Tung, the cultivator from the Great Yin ancient royal family, Yi Futian paid even less attention. A cultivator with a flawed divine wheel of the great path, and with cultivation below the upper-level Runhuang plane, was no threat to him. He would ignore people with such conditions. Although Yin Tung's attack was domineering and enough to deal with other Renhuangs, it would not be so easy if he was against Zifeng. At the same cultivation plane, Zifeng had a flawless great path. If they were to exchange blows, she was more than capable of handling Yin Tung. However, these cultivators from the Great Yin ancient royal family were indeed very powerful. They cleared their way through the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower casually. They appeared as invincible as Yi Futian. At this moment, No one else attacked Yi Futian anymore. They must have known that it was almost impossible for those below the upper-level Renhuang plane to defeat Yi Futian. Right then, Yi Futian saw an overbearing figure advancing towards him in the distance. The divine dragon possessed the figure as it charged forwards. Many cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower wanted to hold this person off, but they were all sent flying by this person. Here he comes, many people around Yi Futian thought to themselves when they witnessed this scene. This person was Yen Teng, and he was heading straight towards Yi Futian. From the looks of it, there was going to be an extraordinary battle. Many observers outside of Wangshan Watchtower thought to themselves. They were waiting in anticipation. They did not know what the outcome would be when the domineering Yen Teng exchanged blows with Yi Futian. This law battle was sure to be extremely exciting. Under these gazes filled with anticipation, Yen Teng charged towards Yi Futian. No other Renhuangs were blocking his way. A gigantic divine dragon circled Yen Teng as he stood in midair. This golden dragon spiraled upwards. Its head was high up in the sky. A pair of large dragon eyes looked down on Yi Futian, emanating an overbearing aura. Roar! A dragon cry caused the space to tremble violently. Terrifying sound waves shocked the spiritual souls of those around. Shadows of divine dragons dove downwards and attacked Yi Futian. At the center of these shadows, a gigantic dragon claw appeared. The claw came crashing down from the sky, immediately covering part of the sky. Yi Futian's figure did not stir. Behind him, a brilliant fiery red silhouette immediately dashed up into the clouds, arriving above Yi Futian. Her divine wings spread out and blocked out the sun and the sky. Countless shadows of phoenixes flew out. Her spiritual soul was like a divine fire that was inextinguishable. The sky above was set ablaze by the divine fire of the great path. The flames consumed the sky. The bright call of the phoenix sounded, clashing against the sound of the dragon cry. Countless feathers seemed to shoot out from the divine wings of the phoenix. Each of these feathers was sharper than a sword. They became an indestructible attack of the great path, slashing towards the sharp dragon claw that came crashing down. A divine light appeared in the heavens above. The sharp dragon claw that botched out the sun in the sky was sliced apart and severed. A gigantic shadow of the phoenix appeared behind Zifeng. It spread its wings, and instantly shot up into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the sky above became her domain of the great path. The divine fire of Wudong enveloped this part of the sky, engulfing it in flames. Yen Teng was surrounded by this domain of the great path of the divine fire. The look in his eyes suddenly changed. These flames were. It was not just him who sensed the might of this divine fire of the great path. Many people seemed to realize something as they glanced at Zifeng in astonishment. It was the divine fire of Wudong. From afar, Yen Dongyang looked towards Zifeng. The brilliant shadow of the phoenix appeared, and the bright call of the phoenix shook the space. The divine fire of Wudong were the flames of the powerful demonic beast of supreme deity Donglai, Lord Phoenix. If that was the case, Zifeng's identity was apparent. I never imagined that the descendant of Lord Phoenix would appear here, Yen Dongyang commented. Once the other Renhuangs heard him say this, only then did they realize Zifeng's identity. She was the descendant of Lord Phoenix. Why had the descendant of Lord Phoenix followed Yi Futian to the Wangshan Watchtower? Lord Phoenix was the demonic beast companion of supreme deity Donglai. His descendants would naturally cultivate on Eastern Deity Island. This meant that Yi Futian had not come with Alchemy Emperor from the Taiyuan continent. He had come from Eastern Deity Island. Many members of the forces of Wangdu were also stunned. The female Renhuang beside Yi Futian actually had such an astonishing origin. Yang Qian, who was battling to the side, also glanced over at Zifeng. His gaze then swept over towards Yi Futian. At that moment, he finally understood why Alchemy Divine Palace had lost so miserably, be it in terms of alchemy techniques or combat ability. It turned out that Yi Futian was a cultivator trained by Eastern Deity Island. Now they had sent him to train in the Wangshan Watchtower. However, in reality, with the relations between Eastern Deity Island and the Wangshan Watchtower, Yi Futian could enter the Wangshan Watchtower and did not need to go through such a hassle. Eastern Deity Island must have wanted him to do so to allow him to display his talents. It was no wonder that, back during the alchemy conference, When the members of Alchemy Divine Palace had bragged about themselves, Yi Futian and the others had opinions about such statements. It turned out that Yi Futian was from the previous, undisputed top alchemy holy land in the Donghua domain. Yi Futian might also be an inheritor of Eastern Deity Island, inheriting their alchemy techniques. Thinking about this made Yang Qian feel somewhat amused. Did it matter whether Yi Futian was from Wangdu? Yi Futian was from Eastern Deity Island. In addition, he had such talent and ability. Did he need the status of being a cultivator from the Dongxiao continent? Hence, it would have been a waste of Yi Futian's time for him to join Alchemy Divine Palace. Before this, Yang Qian and the others had been the ones who were arrogant. The sound of violent collisions came from the sky above. A fierce battle had erupted between Zifeng and Yin Teng. Although Yin Teng's combat ability was powerful, he was facing absolute suppression. He was constantly being pushed back by Zifeng. The elegant phoenix was suppressing the divine dragon. The frightening divine fire of Wudong made Yin Ting only think about escaping the battlefield as soon as possible. Another call of the phoenix filled the skies. The crowd saw the pure-blooded dragon being consumed by the divine fire of the phoenix. With a dull groan, Yin Teng's figure flew outwards, retreating towards a very far place. His figure, which was protected by the great path, was dyed red. Blood could be faintly seen seeping out from underneath his robes. His entire person appeared extremely pathetic. Fresh blood still flowed from the corner of his mouth. Yin Teng, a cultivator from the great Yin ancient royal family, had been defeated. Flawless divine fire of the great path, exclaimed many people in astonishment. Zifeng's ability was powerful. Before this battle, many people had not realized this. Outside of the Wangshan Watchtower's matrix, a cultivator from Alchemy Divine Palace looked towards Alchemy Emperor, and then Goddess Donglai, who was behind him. He said, "We never imagined that the successor of Supreme Deity Donglai had come. Forgive our rudeness." Clearly, they had figured out Goddess Donglai's identity. These past years, Goddess Donglai had rarely appeared in public. Not many people had seen her before. Hence, no one had recognized her before this. However, the descendant of Lord Phoenix had arrived. Connecting the dots between her and Yi Futian, Goddess Donglai's identity became apparent. She was the heir of Supreme Deity Donglai. Goddess Donglai glanced at the other party and did not respond. These people were still pretending to be polite and sincere. "Is Yi Liunyun your disciple, Goddess?" the cultivator from Alchemy Divine Palace asked. "No," denied Goddess Donglai immediately. This caused the other party to be stunned. He was not her disciple. They thought that they had already surmised Yi Futian's identity. However, Goddess Donglai had actually denied it so decisively. With her status, she did not need to lie about this. Then, what identity had Yi Futian come to Wangshan Watchtower with? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1980. Conflict between the Dragon and the Phoenix. Chapter 1980. Conflict between the Dragon and the Phoenix. Seeing that Goddess Donglai had no thoughts that she wished to make public, no one continued to press her. Although they were the top forces from Wangdu, the status of Goddess Donglai, as the descendant of Supreme Being Donglai, was quite a bit loftier. Even if her fortune had changed after the Supreme Being had fallen, their reputation persisted, and the lords of these forces would have to pay her respect when they were in her presence. What's more, this here was outside of Wangshan Watchtower. The relationship between Supreme Being Donglai and the Millet Emperor was well known to everyone. Once again, everyone's attention was fixed on the white-haired man on the battlefield inside the matrix. It seemed that Goddess Donglai deliberately brought Yi Futian to cultivate at Wangshan Watchtower. Moreover, Yi Futian would also obtain the inheritance of the Millet Emperor. After all, besides his relationship with Supreme Being Donglai, his own innate strength was quite astounding. So far, he had not had a single defeat, even with an opponent in the 7th realm. Perhaps Yi Futian's ultimate opponent would be the invincible prince from the great Yin ancient royal family, Yin Dongyang. After Yin Teng was defeated on the battlefield, Many realized that few could counter the Phoenix goddess, who was next to Yi Futian, possessing a perfect divine flame of the Great Path, and extremely domineering offensive power. Yen Teng was the powerful cultivator of the great Yin ancient royal family, at the peak of middle-level Renhuang. If he could be crushed, then others wouldn't stand a chance. At this moment, Yen Dongyang started walking forward. Some cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower wanted to stop him, but they saw that two powerful Renhuangs were walking along on both sides of him to deter the others. "Leave me." Yen Dongyang waved his hand, and suddenly, the men next to him retreated one by one until Yen Dongyang was left by himself. He made his way forward alone. An incomparably majestic momentum of the Great Path bloomed, and the mighty coercion filled the vast void. Inside the space of the matrix, the pressure could be felt by every cultivator. It was as if everyone was within the domain of his Great Path. "Back off." An upper-level Renhuang from Wangshan Watchtower also waved his hand. Suddenly, those cultivators who were about to step forward retreated and gave up their positions. They knew very well that it would be difficult to defeat Yen Dongyang. It was inappropriate for an upper-level Renhuang to get involved, but victory would be equally unlikely with a cultivator of the seventh realm. This was the direct descendant of the great Yin ancient royal family. This time, they led an army composed of Renhuang from the northern land, which was under his control. No doubt this prestigious role confirmed his status. His combat effectiveness likewise was without question. Furthermore, everyone from Wangshan Watchtower realized that this battle had nothing to do with them, but had everything to do with Yi Futian. Zi Feng's identity was now exposed, and everyone had guessed Yi Futian's origin. But what was the relationship between Yen and Eastern Deity Island's ancient royal family? Everyone knew that they were sworn enemies. Since Eastern Deity Island sent Yi Futian to cultivate at Wangshan Watchtower, he and Yen Dongyang were fated to be opponents. Now that they met inside the matrix at Wangshan Watchtower, it was natural that they should have a battle. Both of them were unbeatable, and have not lost a single battle so far. Therefore, when they saw Yen Dongyang moving forward, cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower retreated to give Yen Dongyang and Yi Futian the battlefield. This was a battle between the two of them. Yen Dongyang continued forward and soon faced Yi Futian. Although they were still far apart, this little bit of distance was really negligible for cultivators in their realms. "Yi Lionian," Yen Dongyang said to Yi Futian. Clearly, he knew of Yi Futian's existence. Not only did he knew him, but also he was quite familiar with him. Yi Futian was not surprised by it. His existence was not some big secret, and it was not surprising that Yan's ancient royal family knew of him. However, he did not consider Yen Dongyang as a sworn enemy. Although he was the descendant of the great Yin ancient royal family, Yi Futian had seen many people at this level in the original realm. Some of them were awesome existences. Even principalities, such as the Dark Court, were not unfamiliar to him. From experience, he knew that even the prince of the great Yin ancient royal family would not necessarily be better. He didn't know who would be his sworn enemy, but definitely not Yen Dongyang. To cultivate at Eastern Deity Island and become the heir of Supreme Being Donglai were all but part of the experience he sought by coming to the Divine Prefecture. In his view, it was all part of the trial on the journey of cultivation, so there was nothing as serious as seeing the great Yin ancient royal family as the enemy. Therefore, he regarded Yen Dongyang with total calmness, relaxed and without hatred. He was not serious or solemn, but appeared very laid back. On the contrary, Zi Feng appeared more agitated. Her eyes were cold, and the divine flames of the Great Path were burning in those beautiful eyes. Lord Phoenix had fallen in that battle. Buzz! Wild wind screamed as blazing currents flew in the void. The Great Path's divine flame was ignited between heaven and earth as Zi Feng flapped her wings and appeared in the sky above Yen Dongyang. She let out a long cry as the howl of the phoenix resounded throughout the sky. She returned to her true form, a massive divine phoenix. Her eyes were filled with fierceness, completely different from who she was in human form. Yen Dongyang glanced at her. Inside Yen Dongyang, an extremely violent aura erupted, and the sound of dragons came out of him, and continued to rise until it shook the firmament. A sacred dragon swayed upward to support his body to rise even higher. At this moment, countless giant dragon figures now appeared in the sky. In the middle, Yin Dongyang stood on top of a golden giant dragon, like the lord of the divine dragon. It was something spectacular to behold. The blazing gust of wind roared, and the divine phoenix rushed out toward Yin Dongyang. The boundless and massive phoenix was extremely domineering. The divine flame of the great path burned in the void as her sharp claws tore the great path apart. Roar! The moment Zifeng made her move, thousands of dragons roared at the same time, and the song of the Yin dragon was unleashed. Above the sky, thousands of dragon phantoms roared angrily at the same time, creating quite a sight. Terrifying sound waves of the great path swept out to collapse the other. Many groaned inside the matrix as their blood was roiling inside their body, and their spiritual souls were violently shaken. Those who were not strong enough in their cultivation spat out blood, their faces pale. They dared not watch that battlefield as the powerful and invisible sound waves continuously washed over them, until they had filled this boundless space. If onlookers were suffering in this manner, the kind of sonic attack that Zifeng was under was simply unimaginable. The great path's divine flames seemed to be extinguished by the sound waves, and the massive body of the phoenix seemed to be blocked by an invisible storm. At this moment, Zifeng could feel the attack through every single one of her feathers. She raised her head and screamed, and the sound of the phoenix was loud and clear, enough to tear a gap in the song of the dragon. It was not a harmonious chorus of the dragon and the phoenix, but a struggle. The phoenix continued to attack forward, aiming straight for Yin Dongyang. When he saw this, Futian knew that Zifeng would lose. Although both were comparable in realms, Zifeng possessed the perfect spiritual soul of the great path. Yin Dongyang also possessed the perfect divine wheel. His sonic attacks could subtly restrain many types of attacks. This invisible great path was very powerful, because even if it was not employed as the main attack, its power was usually more damaging as a secondary method to suppress subsequent attacks. The song of the Yin dragon, where 10,000 dragons roared in unison, was just the first wave of Yin Dongyang's attacks. Sure enough, Futian felt a powerful pressure in the next moment, and the vast void seemed to be shrouded and oppressed by an invisible force, heavy and suppressive. Spatial Great Path. Futian thought to himself as he sensed this power of the Great Path. In the next moment, with the attack from Song of the Yin dragon lingering, Yin Dongyang's body swooped down. Above the sky, a most divine dragon roared as it dove down, bringing thousands of divine dragons with him. Every one of these phantom dragons blasted on Zifeng. Although they were hollowed out, they were able to affect Zifeng's momentum. Then Yin Dongyang arrived. Many people looked up. This confrontation was similar to the previous battle between Zifeng and Yin Teng. It was as if Yin Dongyang deliberately did so, but this attack was even more violent. When the dragon and the phoenix converged, the massive divine dragon and the divine phoenix collided. At that moment, a dull sound came from the space, and many felt a suffocating pressure that made it difficult to breathe. In the next moment, there was another long cry from the dragon and the phoenix that shook the sky and cracked the earth. The great path collapsed, and the light of destruction swept across the heavens. Many Renhuang cultivators were thrown out by the momentum. Once again, muffled groans were heard. Those in the lower Renhuang realm vomited blood, knocked back quite a distance. They did not stop until they were quite far away. This extraordinary storm also hit Futian. His white robe danced in the wind, but his body was planted there firmly. His eyes focused on the battlefield motionless. With a loud noise, he saw the divine phoenix being shocked into retreat, and many of her divine feathers fell off. Each divine feather contained divine flame, but they floated weakly in the air. Zifeng was shaken from the void to the ground, and a deep pit formed where she had smashed into the ground. The deep pit was instantly filled with streams of flames, burning with extreme heat. Likewise, Yin Dongyang's body was knocked backward as he returned to a higher altitude. His aura was tossing and tumbling about his person, but it was clear that he fared much better than Zifeng. After he had stabilized his stance, his eyes returned to the area below. He said clearly, as expected, the descendant of Lord Phoenix did not disappoint. The body of his dragon was a little red. It was as if it had been scorched by the divine flame of the great path. But it quickly faded away. Zifeng picked herself up from the ground, and there was blood at the corner of the phoenix's mouth. Her body was still vibrating. Blood was roiling inside of her. Futian waved his hand. Suddenly, a medicine pill flew toward Zifeng. She opened her mouth and swallowed it readily. Her injured body started to recover immediately at an incredible speed. Her eyes were still fixed on Yin Dongyang, who was above in the air as if she was still clamoring to fight. But she knew very well that she had already lost. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1981, Wangshan Watchtower. Chapter 1981, Wangshan Watchtower. After Yin Dongyang defeated Zifeng, he looked at the only person that still remained, and that was Futian. The only person who could stop him now would be this cultivator from Eastern Deity Island. Of course, Yin Dongyang did not think that Futian could really stop him either. After all, Futian's realm was not as high as his. He was Runhuang 5th realm, while Futian was in the 4th realm. Even in the same realm, he was certain of his own prowess over Futian's, let alone he was one realm higher. Zifeng was already a powerful entity, but in his opinion, Futian's strength at most was only at the same level as Zifeng. Futian, likewise, focused his attention on Yin Dongyang, and saw a smile twinkled at the corner of his eyes. However, in this smile, Futian detected a murderous intent. Yin Dongyang intended on taking his life. Boom! The void trembled violently as Futian felt a tightness all over his body. Then there was the rousing sound of the dragon screaming, as the terrifying sound waves of the great path shattered the great path, blasting toward Futian. Futian's golden body dazzled as the sound of Buddha lingering in the air. A Buddha appeared, and the manifold shadows of the Buddha collided with the roaring dragon. Almost at the same time, Yin Dongyang's body transformed into a divine dragon, swooping down. It landed in front of Futian instantaneously. From Futian's view, it was as if a boundless giant dragon had descended from the sky, coming to attack with its infinite and domineering power. The trumpeting of the elephants oscillated between heaven and earth. Futian raised his hands to unleash out his attack. Phantom divine elephants appeared, suppressing the great path, and collided with the other's terrifying force of the great path. Previously the battle was between the dragon and the phoenix. Now it was a battle between the dragon and the elephant. Loud rumbling sounds were heard continuously, shattering the power of the great path that filled this space. An explosive sound came out, and Futian was knocked back into the far distance, feeling as if his blood and breath had been greatly disrupted. The body of his opponent was knocked back into the sky as well. The divine dragon turned around, as Yin Dongyang lowered his head, so that he could look down at Futian. No cultivators of the Eastern Deity Island have mastered such domineering power. No wonder they value you so much. When Futian heard Yin Dongyang's words, he understood that the other knew quite a lot. The war on Eastern Deity Island had happened several years ago. What happened then was well known in Penglai Continent. Although Yanyan Continent may not always have kept tabs on the occurrences on Penglai Continent, the others might have heard a thing or two by now. Futian sensed that Yin Dongyang was an expert at several kinds of power. Sound waves, spatial suppression. These powers of the Great Path had manifested in his attacks, and they were extremely overpowering. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to repel him. Zifeng's defeat was well within his expectation. The divine dragon roared high above, sheltering the sky and the sun. Many around them had stopped fighting and turned their attention to the battlefield. But at this moment, the matrix emitted violent vibrations that caused the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower to raise their heads. They saw that the spatial matrix was under constant changes. What's going on? The matrix is disappearing. Many people were confused and amazed at the same time. Those from the outside looked up at the sky above Wangshan Watchtower and saw an old man standing there, waving his hands. After a while, the self-forming spatial matrix of the Great Path disappeared. Futian and the others found themselves standing in an open field, and they appeared doubtful as they looked at the Runhuang above the palace at Wangshan Watchtower. Did the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower close up the matrix? What was the meaning of this? After the matrix disappeared, those who were inside also looked up at the palaces in the distance, and the one that rose into the sky. This year, there are no qualifying candidates from Dongshao continent and the surrounding continents. The old man on the staircase in the distance stood up and announced. Suddenly, many from other principalities looked disappointed. Did none of them obtain the qualification to cultivate at Wangshan Watchtower? Yi Lionian, go up with the phoenix, the old man said to Yi Futian. Everyone was silent. Sure enough, only Yi Futian and Zifeng qualified. But the rules of this assessment were set by Wangshan Watchtower, as was their right. Naturally, Wangshan Watchtower could do whatever they please without answering anyone. Yes. Yi Futian nodded. Elder. At this moment, Yan Dongyang kept his eyes forward but said loudly, I have not failed in the matrix and now, I would like to be permitted to see the Millet Emperor. The old man glanced at him and said casually, What brings you here? Yan Dongyang looked at the old man and said, In the previous battle, the Millet Emperor's promise of refraining from contacting Eastern Deity Island was the reason why the ancient royal family of Yan agreed to leave Eastern Deity Island alone. All these years, Eastern Deity Island was not harmed. A few years ago, Eastern Deity Island began to be active again and raised that turmoil in the Punglai continent. Now its cultivators are here to seek the way from Wangshan Watchtower. Was this in preparation to cultivate under the Millet Emperor's tutelage? If so, the ancient royal family of Yan may have to reconsider our existing bargain with Eastern Deity Island. Yi Futian looked surprised when he heard what Yan Dongyang had to say. He didn't know there were other things that had happened in the past. No wonder Goddess Donglai worried that the ancient royal family of Yan would turn against him and Eastern Deity Island. It was the main reason that she sent him here to Wangshan Watchtower. It seemed that after the battle in the old days, both sides had their own agreement to keep Eastern Deity Island. Still, it also placed Eastern Deity Island in an isolated position with minimal contact with the outside world. However, the ancient royal family of Yan had never been to Eastern Deity Island before. After all, no one on the outside knew of his status within Eastern Deity Island, nor did they know that he had inherited from Supreme Being Donglai. For the past several years, he had been cultivating in retreat on the island. It should have did not affect a powerful clan like the ancient royal family of Yan. Otherwise, they would have gone to Eastern Deity Island already. From this angle, it was a coincidence that the cultivators from the ancient royal family of Yan encountered him and made the proposal when they saw his strength was extraordinary. What other business do you have with us? The old man asked again. Obviously, he also thought that for so many cultivators from the ancient royal family of Yan to provoke the heavenly battle palace, then participated in the trial of Wangshan Watchtower, decimating the cultivators from the Dongshao continent, Yi Futian could not have been their first target. After all, no one knew of Yi Futian's identity prior to this, nor did they know that he was here and would participate in the assessment. Yan Dongyang raised his head to look at the old man in the distance. Wangshan Watchtower's attitude had been really unfriendly, but it was not surprising. Their purpose here was to escalate the situation. In addition to the deep-seated grievances between the two sides, they had no reason to be friendly. Furthermore, I'm here with the cultivators from the northern land to exchange with the cultivators from the Dongshao continent. I must be honest, I was rather hopeful. Even for those from Wangshan Watchtower, seemed only so in their skills. Until now, I haven't met a true rival. Yan Dongyang continued loudly. The one who cultivated under the Millet Emperor. The one who is known as the #1 genius talent of Wangshan Watchtower. Where is he? Not long ago, because the ancient royal family of Yan had received some bad news, he decided to take a team of people to figure it out. It was true that he did not take the cultivator of Eastern Deity Island seriously before, and the ancient royal family of Yan was even more so. Even now, Yi Futian only made him become more alert. But the one he really cared about was still the one who inquired after the Millet Emperor. Outside of Wangshan Watchtower, everyone looked solemn after they heard Yan Dongyang's words. Immediately, their thoughts turned to one person. The number one genius of Wangshan Watchtower was undoubtedly the number one genius in all of Dongxiao continent. Someone with terrifying talent, a peerless character. You want to see him? The old man asked Yin Dongyang. Yes, I would like to ask for his advice, Yin Dongyang responded. You are not yet qualified. Tell your older brother to come. Perhaps he could qualify. The old man responded lightly, which displeased Yin Dongyang. However, if the rumors are true, then indeed, he would not qualify to be in the presence of the other. The ancient royal family of Yen had received information that he had already proclaimed the Upper Renhuang realm. And not only that, he still possessed the perfect divine wheel. This signified that the man had become a truly flawless Renhuang, and such a person would be a great threat to the ancient royal family of Yen. Until now, no one from Wangshan Watchtower has been able to fight. Why should my brother come in person? Yin Dongyang asked. The old man smiled. He already understood the other's intention. If it's for this matter, then go back and have your brother come in person. The old man responded nonchalantly, not giving him any opening. Yin Dongyang stared at the other man, still standing in the void, and said coldly, I came all this way and crossed many continents to get to Wangshan Watchtower. If I can't ask for Millet Emperor's advice, I wish to battle. Obviously, he didn't intend to relent so easily. The old man glanced at him, then looked at Yi Futian and the others. You guys go up first. Yi Futian nodded as he and Zifeng stepped forward. At this time, Goddess Donglai and the Alchemy Emperor also walked forward to join Yi Futian as they stepped onto the stairs together. The old man turned around, leading them all the way up toward the depths of Wangshan Watchtower. It didn't take them long before they came to the highest point of Wangshan Watchtower. It was similar to a heavenly palace, surrounded by clouds and mist, as if in a wonderland. Ahead at the highest point, there was a platform with someone sitting quietly there. This person was dressed all in black, with inky long hair falling freely behind him. The person seemed to be one with the heavens. Before Yi Futian came here, he could not even feel this person's presence. Behind the man in black was the real Wangshan Watchtower, standing there. It seemed to embody countless years of history. However, when Yi Futian laid his eyes on Wangshan Watchtower, the ancient tree of the world in his life palace started to move, which was a certain sign to Yi Futian. This Wangshan Watchtower was actually a divine item. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1982. Deliver the defeat. Chapter 1982. Deliver the defeat. Yi Futian knew that many principalities in the original realm owned divine items, especially those at the top of their power. Divine items were used to nurture cultivators to obtain the perfect great path and promote their potential to develop the perfect divine wheel. However, this was the first time he saw a divine item that was on the outside. Wangshan Watchtower itself was a divine item. The Millet Emperor was cultivating in front of Wangshan Watchtower and had built the aerial cultivation temple here. The person in black in front of them was clearly the Millet Emperor. Millet Emperor looked to be about 30 years old. On the surface, he didn't appear to be much older than Yi Futian, but in fact, he had cultivated for many years. His eyes were unfathomable. Just like his realm of cultivation, there was no detectable outward aura released. However, it was as if he was one with the heavenly path, in a realm that transcended all others. He, the number one figure in Dongxiao continent, was also the most powerful person on the entire boundless region, with Dongxiao continent as its center. The old man who was leading them, Goddess Donglai, and the others bowed and saluted. Yi Futian did the same and said, Greetings to the Millet Emperor. The Millet Emperor nodded slightly, then looked at Goddess Donglai and asked, Your disciple? Goddess Donglai shook her head and said, Uncle, originally, he came to the Eastern Deity Island for trials, but by chance, he swallowed the elixir and inherited my father's inheritance. He is now regarded as my father's disciple. On the side, the old man who was leading them was a little surprised. He had thought that Yi Futian must have been the heir of Goddess Donglai, But he would have never suspected that Yi Futian had inherited from the supreme being Donglai. The Millet Emperor took a more serious look at Yi Futian, then said, "Since he's your father's heir, why didn't you tell me before? Last time we happened to pass by Senior Brother Alchemy Emperor's place, and came along to give him the opportunity try out with everyone else, also to let Uncle see about his cultivation," Goddess Donglai replied. The Millet Emperor nodded. "I didn't expect that an heir was possible after your father had gone for so many years. At least, we have one less thing to worry about." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Futian and said, "Your great path is perfect. You must have had extraordinary experiences before you showed up in Eastern Deity Island. Where are you from?" Yi Futian looked at Goddess Donglai. Of everyone here, only Goddess Donglai knew of his origin. Even Zifeng didn't quite understand the scope of it. "Please allow me," said Goddess Donglai. However, no one heard her voice anymore. Yi Futian figured that she was communicating with the Millet Emperor through voice transmission. Although Alchemy Emperor and the others were trustworthy, this was a sensitive matter, and it was better that as little as possible was known. The Millet Emperor and her father were close friends, so there was no need to hide anything from him. Since she brought Yi Futian here, it was necessary to be honest with the Millet Emperor regarding Yi Futian's situation. There was a strange look in Millet Emperor's eyes. He was stoic when he heard that Yi Futian was the heir of Supreme Being Donglai, but at this moment, there was a slight emotion that passed over his face. Clearly, he had learned from Goddess Donglai that Yi Futian came from the original realm, and only came to the divine prefecture after being attacked by various principalities. He was silent for a moment and then said, "After your father was gone, our several principalities reached a certain unspoken agreement, and Eastern Deity Island slowly faded out of the sight of Donghua domain. Many years have passed, and though the ancient royal family of Yen was no longer concerned about Eastern Deity Island, his appearance would make the Yen kingdom wary, which may be best for him. It is not difficult for the ancient royal family of Yen to rid themselves of any potential trouble. To avoid Yen kingdom's attack on Eastern Deity Island, I will not accept you as a disciple. However, since you have passed the assessment, you have the right to stay in Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate for a while," said the Millet Emperor. Yi Futian and the others immediately understood what he meant. Even though he was not accepted as a disciple, they would still allow Yi Futian in Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. As for the length of time in cultivation, the ancient royal family of Yen had no final say. This clearly would not giving them any reason for excuses. "Go tell them that whatever it is that they wanted to know was just as they had guessed, so they can go back now," the Millet Emperor said to the old man. "Yes." The old man nodded, then turned to go about his business on informing Yin Dongyang. But moments later, a voice came from below. "Yin Dongyang respectfully came to Wangshan Watchtower today to seek the way, and have not been defeated once in the Matrix. According to the rules, I should be eligible to meet with the Millet Emperor?" This voice could be heard from below to this side. Everyone in the entire Wangshan Watchtower could hear this voice. Obviously, the Millet Emperor had heard it also, as he casually glanced into the distance. The old man immediately returned and bowed his head slightly, saying, "Yin Dongyang refuses to leave. Because he hasn't been defeated yet," the Millet Emperor murmured to himself. He glanced at Yi Futian and asked, "Can you beat him?" "Yes." Yi Futian nodded and responded directly and resolutely. The old man was stunned again. He was so confident in himself. Like Yi Futian, Yin Dongyang was of the Middle Emperor realm with perfect divine wheel of the Great Path. He was extremely talented, with fierce combat efficacy. But Yi Futian's tone was so certain. He was so confident that he could defeat Yin Dongyang. The Millet Emperor nodded slightly and said, "If so, then deliver the defeat that he wanted." "Very well." Yi Futian nodded, then turned to leave, his white hair flowing in the wind, and his demeanor revealed his absolute confidence. Millet Emperor stood up, and in one step, had come directly to the edge of the hanging island. He stared intently at the place far below, watching Yi Futian heading over there, as if he was planning to observe the battle in person. He had learned of Yi Futian's origin from Goddess Donglai, And he was also full of curiosity about Yi Futian. How strong would be a genius talent from original realm? At the edge of Wangshan Watchtower, Run Huang, who came from the northern land, were still in place. Yen Dongyang raised his head and kept his eyes on Wangshan Watchtower in the distance. At this time, they saw Yi Futian coming toward them. Millet Emperor, someone exclaimed. Somewhere far away, they could vaguely see a man standing at the edge of the top peak of Wangshan Watchtower, with hands behind his back, looking in this direction. Although it was quite a distance away, most of the people here were Ren Hunag, so they could clearly see. Was the Millet Emperor asking Yi Futian to come back to fight Yin Dongyang? And was he going to observe this battle in person? Millet Emperor, in the eyes of the many cultivators in the Dongxiao continent, and even the surrounding continents, was an absolute god of supreme existence. And this was the first time that many of them saw the Millet Emperor standing there to observe a battle. Was it because of the presence of the powerful ancient royal family of Yen? The figure in white floated down from the void and landed in the area above the Run Huang from the northern land. Yi Futian lowered his head to look at Yin Dongyang, below, just like Yin Dongyang looked at him before. Their positions now seemed to have reversed. Likewise, Yin Dongyang also raised his head, looking at Yi Futian, who had just returned from Wangshan Watchtower, and said, "Back so soon?" Previously, the old man had said that Yi Futian passed the test and would be qualified to enter Wangshan Watchtower to listen to the Millet Emperor's preaching. This meant that the Millet Emperor would be instructing Yi Futian in cultivation. And now that Yi Futian returned so quickly, was it because of him? Yi Futian nodded and looked at Yin Dongyang. The Millet Emperor does not wish to receive you and has asked that you return to the Yin Kingdom. Wangshan Watchtower is breaking its own rules. I have not been defeated. Why can't I see the Millet Emperor? Yin Dongyang responded. When he was speaking, there was a low chanting of dragon that could be heard from his body, and the void was shaken by it. He headed toward the void, in the direction of Yi Futian. You will be defeated, Yi Futian said as he walked forward. The currents of the great path descended from heaven and fell with all its might. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1983. A Sword. Chapter 1983. A sword. Inside and outside Wangshan Watchtower, countless people stared ahead. At this moment, there was no more spell matrix. Everyone could clearly perceive the two people's aura of the Great Way and unparalleled God's might. Both had perfect grade divine wheels. In the land above, a giant divine elephant appeared above Yi Futian's body. Countless divine elephant figures appeared in the surrounding heaven and earth, stepping on the sky, flooding the sky, making this area into a divine elephant domain. The people understood that that was Yi Futian's avenue divine wheel of the great path. Countless divine elephants dropped down, suppressing the heavens, earth, and firmament, flattening the great way. No one knew just how violently powerful they were. However, Yin Dongyang was an extraordinary man, and the prince of the great Yin ancient royal family. A royal aura enveloped his body, and he was proud and noble. A golden divine dragon appeared as a vision appeared in the sky. A dragon godlike figure hovered in the sky, surrounded by thousands of divine dragons roaring at the same time. The sounds of dragon roars shattered the great way and broke the void, making many divine elephant shadows collapse and shatter. Suddenly, a giant Buddha figure appeared in the firmament. Yi Futian seemed to turn into an ancient Buddha, as the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm was unleashed. The two sound waves collided in the void, causing the great way to collapse and shatter. The sacred dragon went upwards against the trend straight to the clouds, roaring at Yi Futian. Yin Dongyang raised his hand to punch. The complete dragon shadow rushed out at the same time, devouring Yi Futian's body and breaking this side of the sky. Yi Futian looked down at the sky below him. His feet stepped on the void as his divine elephant stepped on the sky. Then he also threw a punch as the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm, and the divine elephant void-splitting fist exploded at the same time, setting off an unparalleled storm of the great path. Several high-level renhuangs of the Wangshan watchtower appeared at different coordinates, blocking the battlefield with an invisible Dao airflow, preventing the terrifying attack from affecting Wangshan watchtower and the cultivators who came to watch the battle. The huge divine elephant and the divine dragon collided in the sky and earth. Countless people looked up to look over there. The firmament made a dull sound like the divine glory of the Great Way swept out. Yi Futian's body was shaken to the sky, while Yin Dongyang was shaken back down. They were still not able to change the position of the two people. An even more violent aura of the Great Way burst forth from Yin Dongyang's body. The golden divine glory swept through the sky as he stared at the figure in the void. Yi Futian stomped on the void, deliberately preventing him from going up to suppress him below Wangshan watchtower. The cultivator, who walked out from the eastern deity island and wanted to suppress him, came from the great Yin ancient royal family. But Yi Futian's attack was indeed extremely furious, and even able to suppress the song of the Yang dragon. If not for his realm being higher than the other party, even the song of the Yang dragon would have been restrained. Yin Dongyang stared at Yi Futian's figure. Suspended in the void, his body suddenly released the extremely noble royal aura. This wisp of royal airflow swept through the heavens. At this moment, the gorgeous golden divine light shot out like blades of divine light from the sun at Yi Futian. Yi Futian frowned as the divine light descended in an instant. When it reached him, it seemed like a golden divine dragon shadow appeared. He raised his hand and waved it. Then the divine elephant blasted out and collided with the dragon shadow. After that, countless divine lights shot out, and each divine light contained a violent attack power. It was stronger and faster than the previous attack. The people looking at the battlefield were shaking inside. There seemed to be millions of attacks coming down in a flash, and Yi Futian's divine elephant seemed to be difficult to resist. Not only that, when countless divine lights bloomed, enveloping this side of the sky, the glow covered Yi Futian's body in it. Heaven and earth were surrounded by his great divine light, as if it turned into a separate great path domain. The light screen made of these divine lights intertwined, and a boundless and huge divine dragon shadow appeared. Yin Dongyang's body and the divine dragon shadow merged into one. Yi Futian's body was covered by the great path domain, and was brought by Yin Dongyang into his great path domain, which formed its own space and turned into a dragon domain. It seemed that Yin Dongyang was still better. After all, he was at a higher cultivation realm. Yin Dongyang swept his head towards Yi Futian. His expression was cold, indifferent, and extremely domineering. As he stepped into the void, the sound of dragon roars shook the sky. Then he raised his fist and blasted out across the sky. Yi Futian only felt bound by a domain, and the space seemed to be frozen. He knew that Yin Dongyang had brought him into his great path domain. Boom! Yin Dongyang punched out through the air. The area where Yi Futian was located emitted a dull sound. It was as if the space was going to be shattered. Within this great path domain, everything was under the control of Yin Dongyang, including the great path of space in this domain. Many people saw the space where Yi Futian was crumbling and cracking. It was as if it was going to be shattered directly along with his body. Bang! A loud sound echoed as the power of the space-tearing Dao bombed the front of Yi Futian's body. But in the end, it did not break Yi Futian's body. He still stood there steadily as wisps of invisible airflow appeared around him. An ancient divine tree seemed to appear in his body, and countless branches and leaves spread out towards the surroundings. Everywhere he passed became the area of the great path he controlled. Yin Dongyang's attack blasted onto this area, but did not break. What's going on? Yin Dongyang frowned. He unexpectedly felt that he was losing control of the space in the great path domain. Along with the invisible airflow spreading around Yi Futian's body, it was as if the power of the great way of that area was instantly taken away by Yi Futian. He was still able to do that in his great path domain? Yin Dongyang seemed to be a bit unconvinced. His fists broke through the air at the same time, and a dull rumble sounded. However, he was still unable to break the space where Yi Futian was, which was not under his control. Yin Dongyang stared at Yi Futian. He pointed to the sky, and the sacred dragon that enveloped this great path domain directly engulfed the space where Yi Futian was located. wanting to swallow that space along with Yi Futian. Yi Futian was not moved at all. His hands formed a seal. Then the surrounding branches and leaves seemed to turn into wisps of sword will. Sounds of sword chants rang out. In a flash, infinite divine swords circled Yi Futian's body, forming a resonance, creating an extremely magnificent view. Countless gazes looked towards the shocking scene on the battlefield. The giant divine dragon that covered the sky was enormous. Its open mouth could devour a piece of the sky, and its shadow covered Yi Futian's body. It became darker and darker, and the divine dragon shot down and devoured the entire space. But at the same moment, Yi Futian pointed his finger toward the sky. The next moment, his body disappeared as the incomparably huge divine dragon swallowed him. Many people's hearts shook violently. But the next moment, they saw the huge body of the divine dragon shaking violently. Every part of the body blossomed with gorgeous light that seemed like blades of light. Buzz! On the back of the divine dragon, a blade of light directly broke through his body. The blinding blade of light shot straight to the clouds. An explosion sounded, and the huge body of the divine dragon shattered madly under the sword will. Many people only felt that the void shook violently, and there was a great divine radiance sweeping out, like the shattering of the great path domain. There Yi Futian's figure reappeared. His silver hair danced with the wind, and his body was immaculate, just like an immortal. Your great path domain is too fragile. Yi Futian looked down at Yin Dongyang. His glance directly invaded Yin Dongyang's consciousness, and actually made Yin Dongyang feel chills run through his body. The next moment, an invisible Dao airflow above Yi Futian's body enveloped this side of the sky. Above the firmament, there were billions of divine swords whistling around the space where Yi Futian was, turning into a horrific swordsmanship storm. An incomparably strong sword will seem to blossom on Yi Futian's body. A sword appeared in each of 9 different coordinates. The trillions of sword wills spun around the 9 swords faster and faster. Along with a gorgeous blade of light shining, hundreds of millions of sword will seem to turn to one sword. Go! Yi Futian pointed at Yin Dongyang. In an instant, from the firmament downward, a blade of light appeared. The blade of light made by billions of divine swords was like a giant sword directly penetrating this side of the sky. From top to bottom, it ignored spatial distances. Infernal! A strange glimmer flashed between Goddess Penglai's beautiful eyes as she saw the sword. That swordsmanship was a sword art inherited from the eastern deity island. It seemed like Yi Futian had mastered it. When the sword was unleashed, it could still kill an opponent thousands of miles away with a single strike, let alone that bit of distance. The crowd could only see that from the sky to the bottom, there seemed to be a sword penetrating the heaven and earth, and there was an astounding sound of a dragon roar from Yin Dongyang's body. But the next moment, the sacred giant dragon was penetrated, and Yin Dongyang's body also turned into a ray of light, and was stabbed all the way down to the ground from the void. Boom! The terrifying sword will tore through the earth, and as the blade of light disappeared, everything around it shattered into nothingness. A sword pit appeared on the ground, and terrifying cracks surrounded it. The mighty figures of the great Yin ancient royal family all stepped forward toward the sword pit. A figure stained with blood walked out of the pit. Its clothes were torn and tattered, and his long hair was messy. He had lost all of his emperor's aura and looked disheveled. He looked up at the figure in the void. This time he did not come for Yi Futian, but for the one in Wangshan Watchtower. He lost to Yi Futian's sword. He lost to the cultivator of the eastern deity island. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1984. Domain Chief's Manor. Chapter 1984. Domain Chief's Manor. Yin Dongyang was defeated. Yin Dongyang was a direct descendant of the imperial lineage of the great Yin ancient royal family from the northern land. He was a descendant of the great Yin royal family bloodline, and he was someone with a perfect divine wheel of the great path. He had lost to Yi Futian. If Yi Futian were from the Dongxiao continent, then it was Yi Futian who protected the pride of the Dongxiao continent with his own strength. However, he was cut off from the Dongxiao continent. He came from the eastern deity island, and did not care to be with those from the Dongxiao continent. Thinking about how many cultivators of Huangdu tried to scheme against Yi Futian previously, several people felt that it was quite ridiculous. Qi Mu of the Alchemy Divine Palace even wanted to stop Yi Futian from entering Wangshan Watchtower. However, how could they stop him? Yi Futian alone outweighed the light on everyone. The Millet Emperor had already met him and told him to come down from Wangshan Watchtower and defeat Yin Dongyang. Yi Futian also succeeded. After he saw Millet Emperor, he came down from the watchtower and defeated Yin Dongyang with a single blade of light. At this moment, standing in the void, Yi Futian was like the son of a god. He was unbeatable. He has a perfect divine wheel of the Great Path and defeated Yin Dongyang, who also has a perfect divine wheel of the Great Path, and was at a higher realm. Was this battle the revenge of the Eastern Deity Island against the Great Yin ancient royal family? No one would forget the grudge between the Eastern Deity Island and the Great Yin ancient royal family. Eastern Deity Island was overthrown because of Great Yin. After many years, the cultivators who came out of the Eastern Deity Island defeated all the Renhuangs of the northern land. No one could compete with them. But Goddess Penglai, who was watching the battle overhead, knew that Eastern Deity Island could not produce such a person. She had always wanted to, but the birth of this level of character needs an opportunity. They could not be nurtured just like that. The Eastern Deity Island's cultivation resources were powerful. Among the Great Yin ancient royal family and other top factions of the Divine Prefecture, who did not have powerful cultivation resources, Yi Futian came from the original realm and stepped into Eastern Deity Island. It was probably an opportunity, not for Yi Futian, but for Eastern Deity Island. So she sent Yi Futian to Wangshan Watchtower and let him prove his strength. At this time, Yi Futian looked down at Yin Dongyang in the sky below. He looked calm and did not feel the excitement after defeating a strong enemy. Instead, he appeared extraordinarily indifferent. It was as if everything should have been just like this. Standing in the void, he spoke indifferently. Now you have a defeat. But thinking about Yin Dongyang's words before, and the words of the elder of the Wangshan Watchtower, maybe not, they speculated. But the Millet Emperor would definitely preach to Yi Futian, or at least teach him a lot. No one denied that. He was only a level 4 Renhuang, but already so powerful. Even ordinary level 7 high-order Renhuang were no match for him. If he cultivated in Wangshan Watchtower for a while, and reached a higher level, another peerless individual would walk out from it in the future. Will the Eastern Deity Island regain its glory in his hands? At this time, the elder from Wangshan Watchtower in the void took a step forward, looked at the people from all sides and said, "This is the end for this year. Let's all disperse." It was over. Many people showed a disappointed look. Wangshan Watchtower was also a bit disappointed with the cultivators this time. Of course, perhaps Yi Futian's unprecedented appearance and the arrival of the Renhuangs of the northern land have led to the present situation. Otherwise, there would certainly be some of them who could enter Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. However, this was the luck of the times, and there was nothing much to say. As the mighty figure of Wangshan Watchtower spoke, everyone dispersed and withdrew one after another. Chimu looked in the distance. As the heir to the Alchemy Divine Palace, he realized at this moment how big the gap between himself and Yi Futian was. Even if Yi Futian did not know how to make pills, they could not be mentioned in the same breath, and were destined to never be at the same level. Yi Futian would be able to be in direct contact with the Millet Emperor. One of the Alchemy Divine Palace elders opened his mouth and said, "Let's go." Qi Mu and the others also left. However, there were still many cultivators who still looked at Wangshan Watchtower and looked at Yi Futian. Naturally, Xia Qingyuan did not leave, and Lin Qiu and the others were also there, quietly standing below. The elder looked down at them, and then asked Yi Futian, "Are you together?" "Yes." Yi Futian nodded. "They're all my companions." The old man opened his mouth and said, "Since that's the case, let's enter Wangshan Watchtower together and rest." "Many thanks." Yi Futian smiled, and at once, figures rose into the air. Lin Xiu came to Yi Futian's side and looked at him like he was looking at a monster. Although he had imagined that Yi Futian would be strong, he found that he still underestimated his power every time. I have a question to ask you, Lin Xiu said to Yi Futian. What? Yi Futian said. Those pills, did you refine them yourself? Lin Xiu gave Yi Futian an odd look. Ahem. Yi Futian looked ahead and said, Senior Millet Emperor is still waiting for me. With that, he accelerated forward. Lin Xiu looked at his back figure and paused, speechless. Did he really refine them himself? In the various palaces and pavilions in Wangshan Watchtower, many renhuangs appeared, and were all sizing Yi Futian up. Although they did not go out previously, each of their divine consciousness was always there, and they had seen that battle. In this generation, Wangshan Watchtower could not find anyone among those at the middle-level renhuang level who could defeat Yi Futian. It seemed that the Eastern Deity Island was going to have a popular figure. Many human emperors nodded to Yi Futian across the sky, and Yi Futian nodded in response until he arrived at the Hanging Island again, where the Millet Emperor was cultivating. The Millet Emperor had seen that battle with his own eyes. He looked at Yi Futian and said, Not bad. Yen Dongyang is a level 5 renhuang with a perfect divine wheel of the Great Path. Yet you still managed to defeat him despite your lower level. In Donghua Domain, there shouldn't be many people at the middle-level renhuang plane who could hold their own against you. Yi Futian naturally understood that only a renhuang with a perfect divine wheel of the Great Path could hold their own against him. People of this level were basically the proud sons of heaven of the top factions. There would not be too many of them in Donghua Domain. However, the great Yin ancient royal family did not care about the Eastern Deity Island and your existence previously. But after this battle, after Yen Dongyang returns, the great Yin ancient royal family will certainly pay attention, which is not good for you or the Eastern Deity Island. The Millet Emperor continued. It was because they cared about the Eastern Deity Island that they brought him here, Goddess Donglai said at the side. The Millet Emperor pondered for a moment and looked at Yi Futian with a thoughtful expression. Yi Futian's strength could not be hidden. The Eastern Deity Island noticed him now. But as he grew, more people would notice his existence in the future. Unless he continued to practice alone in the Divine Prefecture, what happened in the original realm would be exposed sooner or later. In the original realm, Yi Futian would also have strong enemies from the Divine Prefecture. If you can enter the Domain Chief's manor, then in the Donghua Domain, no one will be able to touch you. The Millet Emperor seemed to have thought of something. Domain Chief's manor? Yi Futian looked at the Millet Emperor. In the 18 domains in the Divine Prefecture, every domain had a Domain Chief's manor. Naturally, Donghua Domain had one too. The Domain Chief's manor was subordinate to Donghuang the Great, and was directly linked to Donghuang the Great's family. It watched over the Divine Prefecture, and was extremely powerful. If one would consider the Domain Chief's manor as a faction, then the Domain Chief's manor of the 18 domains in the Divine Prefecture was the faction at the very apex. Moreover, they had the Great Emperor backing them. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Yes, the Domain Chief's manor. The Millet Emperor nodded at Yi Futian. Donghua Domain Chief's manor oversees the entire domain. Virtuosos can be found everywhere in the manor. While the manor naturally does not nurture practitioners, it will continuously absorb virtuosos into their ranks to increase their strength. Only then will they have the ability to control all the factions. Yes, the Domain Chief's manor. The Millet Emperor nodded at Yi Futian. Donghua Domain Chief's manor oversees the entire domain. Virtuosos can be found everywhere in the manor. While the manor naturally does not nurture practitioners, it will continuously absorb virtuosos into their ranks to increase their strength. Only then will they have the ability to control all the factions. With your current abilities, you definitely are eligible to join the Domain Chief's manor and become their member. Any faction in the Divine Prefecture will hesitate before attempting to do you any harm. Yi Futian nodded. According to what he knew, the older brother of the king of the golden divine nation of the original realm, was a subordinate of Donghuang the Great. Of course, there would be many people who worked under the chief of the domain chief's manor. The millet emperor now understood Yi Futian's circumstance from listening to the Donglai goddess. He had two reasons for giving this suggestion. First, it was for Yi Futian's sake. With a powerful faction backing him, all antagonistic factions would think twice before doing him any harm. Second, it was for the Eastern Deity Island's sake. If Yi Futian managed to gain influence in the domain chief's manor, Eastern Deity Island would also be a lot more stable, and the great Yin ancient royal family would not dare to act rashly. Furthermore, given Yi Futian's display of his extraordinary combat abilities, there was a high chance that he would become a member of the upper echelons in the domain chief's manor. While Yi Futian was inclined to take up this suggestion, he was still a little hesitant. With his origin still a mystery, he was unsure of his position. Even though Donghuang Princess had saved his life once, Donghuang the Great still bore a grudge against Emperor Yi Qing. The millet emperor continued, "However, you need not think about this now. Your combat abilities far surpass your cultivation level. Now you are only at the 4th Renhuang level. If you can raise your cultivation to the pinnacle of the middle-level Renhuang level, no one can threaten you, unless they are really at the pinnacle of the Renhuang level. If you can further raise your cultivation to a high-level Renhuang level, with a perfect grade divine wheel, there won't be many people who can even touch you in the entire divine prefecture." Even though there were several exceptional characters in the divine prefecture, considering the size of the divine prefecture, the ratio was minuscule. The divine prefecture had infinite continents. In contrast, just how many exceptional characters were there? Apart from this special class of practitioners, only high-level Renhuangs with a perfect grade divine will could pose a threat to a Yi Futian, who had attained a high-level Renhuang cultivation level. Furthermore, they had to be at least a level 8 Renhuang. These people would already be considered the cream of the crop. Of course, this was only with the premise that Yi Futian would break through to a high-level Renhuang while retaining the perfection of his great path. I understand. However, cultivation isn't something that is completed in a single act. Thus, I can only learn through trials that I encounter as I tour the entire divine prefecture, and raise my cultivation as I train myself, Yi Futian said. The millet emperor nodded. Continuously shutting yourself off from the rest of the world to cultivate is indeed pointless. Moreover, the cultivation of one's great path requires one to travel abroad to feel and comprehend the great path. Before you have attained a sufficient depth of understanding, you should not rush to raise your level. In particular, you should avoid using elixirs to attain a breakthrough. Only by doing so will your great path foundation be stable. The opportunity that you encountered on the Eastern Deity Island that strengthened your life force was in fact the origin of all life. It's the same thing with the path of heaven and earth. Only if your foundation is stable can you progress smoothly. Even though you inherited the ability to refine elixirs, don't over-rely on the elixir's powers to raise your cultivation level. Especially those who forcefully raise their cultivation through ingesting elixirs. Their foundation of their great path is damaged. Even if it is not noticeable from the surface, it is very different for you. You are looking to forge a perfect grade divine wheel, so you cannot even take a single misstep. Only then can you maintain your perfect great path. Yi Futian listened on quietly. The millet emperor was giving him advice, afraid that he would take the wrong path. Before I became a high-level Renhuang, my divine will was perfect. However, after that, I was a little too impatient in my cultivation and was too hasty in leveling up. Even though my consciousness was calm and stable, there was still a wisp of impulsiveness in me, and I overestimated my own abilities. This caused flaws to form in my great path when I ascended to the high-level Renhuang level, and my cultivation thereafter was affected. Even though he was very calm when recounting his past, if he were given a chance to go back into the past, he would certainly pay even more attention to the foundation of his great path, and would rather make a breakthrough at a later time. I will remember your words earnestly. Yi Futian bowed lightly. The memories of the Donglai Supreme Deity believed the same thing. He inferred this because the elixirs that the supreme deity refined weren't ones that directly helped him to attain breakthroughs. Rather, they were elixirs that helped stabilize his foundation further, strengthen his body, nurture his life force, and raise his sensitivity to the great path. This was all so that he could feel the great path even more closely. In the past, when he helped Emperor Helion broke through, the elixirs that he refined were also of the same type. He helped Emperor Helion avoid destabilizing his foundation in his haste to pursue success, and thus avoid the tragedy of a cultivation breakthrough at the expense of future progress. Of course, as for the elixirs that helped one to break through one's bottleneck, he prescribed them to those who had reached the limit of their cultivation. They already knew that they did not have the ability to level up any further. To them, when any further progress was hopeless, any step forward was a step up. Even if they had to rely on elixirs and pills to do it, it was still better than no progress at all. At that moment, the Millet Emperor turned around and said to Yi Futian, "Follow me." Yi Futian nodded and followed behind the Millet Emperor toward Wuxian Watchtower. It stood straight between heaven and earth. The Donglai goddess and the rest stood there silently and watched. It seemed that the Millet Emperor wanted Yi Futian to cultivate in the Wuxian Watchtower. Yi Futian had inherited everything her father had left behind, and had even displayed such prowess. The Millet Emperor was naturally very impressed by him, and wanted to help him in his cultivation to reach even greater heights. This Wuxian Watchtower was a mystical object in the world of cultivation. It had amassed the fortune of the world. In the Dongxiao continent, there were many rumors regarding this Wuxian Watchtower. Many people believed that it was merely a watchtower that had become renowned because of the Millet Emperor. In reality, it was truly a spirit gate. Yi Futian followed the Millet Emperor to the front of Wuxian Watchtower. The world tree in his body swayed and emitted a crisp sound, as though it were trying to break out from his body. In the past few years, Yi Futian had also encountered a few similar incidences. The objects that could cause the world tree in his body to behave in such a manner were all divine objects. His eyes followed the watchtower up into the skies above, and saw that this spiritual gate seemed to be one with the path of the heavens, as though it were the great path itself. This space that he was in seemed to be different from the space below the watchtower. This space was separate from the rest of the world. "Can you feel it?" the Millet King asked Yi Futian. "It is the great path of sealing," Yi Futian replied. The Millet King nodded. "I noticed that you are also well versed in the great path of suppression. The power of the divine elephant is extremely domineering and can suppress an entire space. This watchtower here has an extremely ancient history. Legends say that this divine object is a treasure from the ages before the collapse of the heavenly path. Some legends say that this watchtower used to be a stone gate guarding the entrance to the heavenly realm. By a stroke of luck, it ended up in my possession. It might be because I happen to be familiar with a very similar type of power as well. However, even after countless years, I am unable to refine it fully. Perhaps only a divine being could fully refine a divine object. Why don't you give it a try?" the Millet Emperor asked Yi Futian. Wuxian Watchtower stood just ahead. It seemed to be so close to them, yet in reality, they were still some distance away. It was like an otherworldly gate. Its aura was very pressurizing, and even with a glance, one could sense its solemn, ancient aura. Yi Futian stepped forward towards it, and an impossibly heavy pressure of the great path pressed onto his body. That power felt like the heavens were pressing down on him. The watchtower seemed to be just in front of him, yet it wasn't easy to reach it. Bang! A low sound echoed out, and Yi Futian's footsteps became heavier. At that moment, he felt that everything around him had disappeared. In his senses, there was no Millet Emperor, no cultivation court. There was only that spirit gate. Divine objects encompassed the most original power of the great path, the purest form of power, Yi Futian chanted in his heart. The space here seemed to have morphed into a separate domain, isolated from the rest of the world. He stood at the top of the spirit gate that seemed to peek into the heavens. From above the spirit gate, the force of the great path pressed down on him like the weight of the heavens was compressing him. With each step he took forward, he felt the pressure on him increase. Furthermore, An illusion seemed to be presenting itself to Yi Futian. In his mind, the spirit gate seemed to be getting taller, as though it were becoming a true heavenly tower. If I cultivated the great path of suppression here, I would definitely progress at an incredible rate, a thought surfaced in Yi Futian's mind. This was the purest power of the great path. How high must my cultivation level be if I wanted to step into the Wangshan watchtower? Yi Futian continued forward, and it seemed like he had walked for a very long time. His footsteps became slower, and it seemed like he could never reach the end. After some time, he finally stopped to sit down and began cultivating. Not far away, the Millet Emperor and the rest observed Yi Futian quietly. The Donglai goddess walked to the Millet Emperor and asked, "Uncle Millet, what happened to him?" The Yi Futian now seemed to be acting strangely. He had already reached the center of the great path around its spirit gate. The Millet Emperor replied, "He might cultivate for quite some time in there, so there is no need to be concerned for him." The Donglai goddess nodded. The Alchemy Emperor also looked ahead. Yi Futian was powerful, and he had pretty good luck, too, for the Millet Emperor to allow him to cultivate under this divine object. This divine object was the Millet Emperor's personal cultivation grounds. Only those for whom he had the highest hopes could enter. Now that he is here, what are your plans? The Millet Emperor looked at the Donglai goddess. "It is time for me to return," the Donglai goddess said. "The great Yin ancient royal family will probably target here, and not pay as much attention to the Eastern Deity Island. If they wanted to act, they would not provoke me through the Eastern Deity Island, because it is just not worth it. If they really acted, it would be directed towards him or you." The Millet Emperor looked at the Yi Futian in front and said, "In that case, why don't you stay here and cultivate as well? You can bring him to the Donghua heavens next time. With your strength, there aren't that many people from the Great Yin who can defeat you." The Donglai goddess let out a thoughtful expression. The Eastern Deity Island was of little value to the Great Yin ancient royal family, and they couldn't care less about it. With Yi Futian emerging from the Eastern Deity Island, they could deal with Yi Futian directly if they wanted to deal with the Eastern Deity Island. They did not have to attack the Eastern Deity Island and provoke the Millet Emperor. In the original language, Wangshan Watchtower is pronounced as Wangshank. The last two characters are the same as Shunkei, which is translated to Spirit Gate, a pressure point in traditional Chinese medicine. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1986, Zongchan. Chapter 1986, Zongchan. A few months later, the ripples from the Battle of Wangshan Watchtower gradually passed, and fewer people talked about it. However, the people of Wangdu all learned a new name, Sword Emperor Yi Lionian. In the various rumors spread around Wangdu, Yi Lionian had become a legendary character. Wen Yin Dongyang, prince of the great Yin ancient royal family, led his army of Renhuangs from the northern land, and suppressed the virtuosos of Wangdu and various factions in the Dongshao continent. The Sword Emperor Yi Lionian defeated the entire army with a single strike of his sword. He managed to force the virtuosos of the great Yin ancient royal family to retreat, and because of this achievement, he managed to impress the Millet Emperor. Now, Yi Lionian was cultivating at the Wangshan Watchtower, under the personal guidance of the Millet Emperor. With just one battle, the name Yi Lionian had made itself known to all of Wangdu. The Wangshan Watchtower had one more practitioner with unrivaled strength. There weren't many people who were granted access to the Wangshan Watchtower, which was the Millet Emperor's personal cultivation court. However, at that moment a practitioner, who looked to be in his 30s, walked over. He had an extraordinary air about him. He seemed rather cultured, and although he did not emit ripples of power, just him standing there alone made people feel like he was one with heaven and earth. It was a very comfortable feeling. This person was the top prodigy in the Wangshan Watchtower. Zongchan had been cultivating in the Wangshan Watchtower for many years, and he was also the top prodigy of the Wangshan Watchtower. So he certainly had the right to come here. In fact, he could enter the Spirit Gate to cultivate anytime he wanted. The last time Yin Dongyang came was because of Zongchan. It was rumored that the top prodigy of the Wangshan Watchtower, Zhong Chan, had broken through to the high-level Runhuang cultivation level. Furthermore, his great path was still perfect. In this aspect, the Millet Emperor had personally admitted his own inferiority and had gotten his subordinate to inform Yin Dongyang. A high-level Runhuang with 7 perfect levels of the Great Path would essentially be someone who stood at the pinnacle of the cultivation world. Even in the endless divine prefecture, there weren't many people who were like that. There were very few people who could even compare to Zhong Chan. Any practitioner like this was a practitioner who had great potential and could one day stand above everyone else in the world of cultivation. The divine prefecture's legendary figures were all like this, and Zhong Chan had begun to join their ranks. Because of this, the Yinyan continent was shocked, and it was why Yin Dongyang traversed continents to come here. Zhong Chan walked towards the spirit gate and raised his head to look at it. Below, an old man walked past. However, he was from the eastern deity island, so it should not be a surprise that he had not heard of his name before. How did you feel these few days cultivating in the spirit gate? Zhong Chan asked. Yi Futian looked at Zhong Chan and said, "This place contains the most primeval form of power of the great path of suppression, so it's a place that is especially suitable for people who are cultivating similarly. I think this place is especially suitable for practitioners who are cultivating a similar power. However, I wonder just how strong the pure power of the great path of suppression will be. Would it be as powerful as this spirit gate, that is like the will of the heavens? If you would like to feel it, I can help you," Zhong Chan said with a smile. Yi Futian hesitated for a moment and looked at Zhong Chan. He said, "Please teach me." "Prepare yourself," Zhong Chan said. He stood there silently, and the power of the great path in the surrounding space started flowing, and in the space above them, the wisps of power gathered to form a stone steel. A low rumble reverberated throughout the space. Yi Futian looked up at the stone steel and sensed the flow of the great path cascading down. In the next moment, the stone steel pressed down towards him. In his eyes, the stone steel seemed to be enlarging rapidly, becoming a heavenly steel. Above Yi Futian, a golden light glimmered, and a divine halo appeared above. Its arms shot upwards and crashed onto the stone steel. A loud rumble echoed out. Even though the stone steel was knocked backward, there was no sign of damage. "High-level Renhuang," Yi Futian muttered softly. Zhong Chan waved his palm, and instantly, in the skies above, multiple stone steels appeared simultaneously, levitating in various locations. The great path of suppression that they emitted caused Yi Futian to feel breathless. Oin! A divine light radiated out, and the stone steels that revolved around this space immediately sealed the space, causing it to become an insulated stone steel domain. On every stone steel, there were terrifying runes. An incomparably strong ripple of the great path cascaded on Yi Futian, causing him to feel suffocated. He felt like he could not even move a single finger. A perfect great path. Yi Futian looked at the countless stone steels sealing the space, morphing into the great path's absolute domain. Furthermore, it was a domain of the great path that he could not hope to escape. He did not expect that in Wangshan Watchtower, he could get to meet such a powerful practitioner, a high-level Runhuang with a perfect great path. "How do you feel about it?" Zhong Chan ceased his attacks and asked Yi Futian with a smile. "It's really powerful," Yi Futian replied in awe. "Under an attack like this, there's nowhere for me to hide. If the attack really struck me, even if I didn't die, I would be severely injured." Zhong Chan waved his hand, and the stone steels disappeared instantly. "It's naturally like this, given that there is a difference in cultivation level between us. However, if you and I were on the same cultivation level, how it would end would be a question." Yi Futian agreed with him. Among all the opponents he had encountered in the past, none of them was a high-level Runhuang with a perfect great path. Zhong Chan's cultivation level was truly higher than his by 3 full levels. Moreover, this included the chasm in power between a middle-level Renhuang and a high-level Renhuang. With that kind of cultivation level, even if Yi Futian fought to his death and used every ounce of strength he had, there was likely still no chance of victory. Your attack techniques are quite similar to this spirit gate. Yi Futian turned around to look at the spirit gate. When teacher guided me in my cultivation attributes were another factor apart from talent. Due to my natural attributes, I naturally synergized to a certain extent with the spirit gate. It's only after years of cultivation in the spirit gate that I have managed to arrive at where I am now, Zhongchan replied calmly. He was very humble. Yi Futian could not detect a tinge of arrogance from his voice. Perhaps when someone had cultivated to this level, his internal self would also become extremely calm. A perfect great path at all 7 levels. This person before him seemed destined to become the most powerful person in the entire divine prefecture. You can come over to chat, a voice sounded out. The two of them turned to look into the distance. Zhongchan smiled and nodded. Yes, teacher. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1987, Tribulation of Gods. Chapter 1987, Tribulation of Gods. Yi Futian and Zhongchan went over to the Millet Emperor. The elderly man from before was also there. His name was Li Changsheng, and he had entered Wangshan Watchtower even earlier than Zhongchan. He had begun following the Millet Emperor many years ago. Now he was in charge of most of the matters in the Wangshan Watchtower. Li Changsheng showed Yi Futian a gentle smile. He had an extraordinary aura that made people feel very comfortable. The both of you possess a perfect grade divine wheel. It's almost too much that the two of you are cultivating in this Wangshan Watchtower. You guys still sparred. Was this out of brotherly love? Li Changsheng said with a smile. His tone was very gentle like a spring breeze. I was just curious and wanted to see Brother Ye's path, Zhongchan replied with a smile. Brother Zhong can be considered as my senior already. A high-level Run Huang with a perfect great path is someone that I naturally can't compare to. Of course, I couldn't have been sparring with him. I was merely asking for some guidance, Yi Futian replied with a smile. Both of you are outstanding talents in the entire divine prefecture, and yet you are so formal and humble to each other. This old man can't bear to listen any longer, Li Changsheng said with a smile. Oh yes, I have yet to introduce myself to our little friend Yi. I am Li Changsheng, and I've been cultivating in the Wangshan Watchtower all along. Senior, you are too kind. Yi Futian bowed slightly. He could sense that Li Changsheng's cultivation level was at the 9th Renhuang level. Months ago, when he first entered the Wangshan Watchtower, it was he who was looking on. All the other Renhuangs regarded him as the core of their group. It was just that now that they were in the presence of the Millet Emperor, he gave off a completely different feeling. Furthermore, from the conversations of a few people, Yi Futian could tell that the Millet Emperor had a rather casual personality. Otherwise, Li Changsheng and Zhongchan would not be speaking so casually either. Obviously, they were very used to it already. Calling me senior feels so distant. Since you are also cultivating in this Wangshan Watchtower, you are also a friend of the path. You can call me Brother Changsheng, Li Changsheng said. Even though they were not formally the Millet Emperor's disciples, they called him their teacher. The Millet Emperor also would not take Yi Futian as his disciple. However, since he was also cultivating in the Wangshan Watchtower, he did not mind calling him his brother in cultivation. Brother Changsheng. Yi Futian certainly was not bothered by these small details, and bowed lightly. I have once again managed to scam a powerful practitioner into becoming my junior, Li Changsheng said with a smile. In the future, when you step onto the pinnacle of cultivation, remember to take care of your brother here. Brother Changsheng, stop teasing me. Yi Futian shook his head with a smile. Currently, he was still a good bit weaker than Li Changsheng. Brother Zhong, perhaps in the future, you will have a rival, and you won't be lonely anymore. Li Changsheng smiled at Zhongchan. As the top prodigy of cultivation of Wangshan Watchtower, he was always unrivaled in his generation. No one could hope to compete with him. I am actually looking forward to it. Zhongchan smiled. I am still too far away from Brother Zhong, Yi Futian humbly said. However, there was quite a difference between them. People enter the world of cultivation at different times, so how strong or weak you are now means very little. At our levels of cultivation, every increment in level may require years of cultivation. After cultivating for a long time, you will realize that if you stay stagnant, people from the younger generations will overtake you, the Millet Emperor said. Li Changxing felt that deeply. Even though Yi Futian had never experienced it himself, he understood it. It was just that he had always been the one overtaking others. And so, although he could understand, he could not empathize very well. However, there is no need to force it at the expense of your psyche. A stable foundation of the great path trumps everything. To prodigies like you, the most important thing is the destination of your great path, continued the Millet Emperor. Zhong Chan and Yi Futian both nodded their heads. I am planning to go out at the end of the year. The two of you will come with me, said the Millet Emperor. Teacher, where are we going? Zhong Chan asked. For the Millet Emperor to travel there himself, the destination should be a very unusual place. Changsheng, why don't you tell him? The Millet Emperor looked at Li Changsheng. Yes, teacher. Li Changsheng nodded his head and smiled at Zhong Chan and Yi Futian and said, My two juniors, you are in luck. This journey is exceptionally meaningful to you. Perhaps in the future, you might experience it as well. Zhong Chan let out an expression of surprise. Li Changsheng was also so serious. Just where exactly were they going? Not long ago, the Turtle Deity Island sent news that Emperor Shi was going to experience 3 tribulations, Li Changxing said. This news had already spread to all the islands on the Divine Ocean. The news says that Emperor Shi does not mind people watching. Tribulation of Gods. Zhong Chan's eyes showed a tinge of shock. Emperor Shi was a legendary figure in the Donghua domain. He had a perfect great path, and his cultivation was at the pinnacle of the Runhuang level. He already stood at the top of the Donghua domain. Now, was he going to experience the 3 tribulations? The 3 tribulations were the tribulations of gods. Since the collapse of the heavenly path, a perfect great path was no longer tolerated by the order of the current world. If anyone wanted to step onto the heavenly path, they had to survive 3 tribulations. In the entire divine prefecture, there were very few people of such caliber. Once Emperor Shi managed to survive the first tribulation, he would likely become the most powerful existence in the entire Donghua domain. When Li Changxing said that they might also experience it in the future, he meant that if they continued to preserve the perfection of their great paths, when they stepped onto the pinnacle of the Runhuang level, they would have to survive 3 tribulations in order to step into the heavenly path. Yi Futian had understood cultivation to far great extent now, and naturally also knew of the 3 tribulations. In his memory, anyone who survived all 3 tribulations was a legendary figure of the divine prefecture. Anyone who survived 3 tribulations was a living god. Thus, apart from these living gods in this world, there were only those who have survived the first and second tribulation. One could imagine just what sort of existence they were. It was no wonder that even someone like Zhong Chan was moved by this. It seems like the Turtle Deity Island was going to shock the Donghua domain, Zhong Chan muttered softly. Definitely. An event as grand as this rarely happens even in 1,000 years. I wonder how many of the top practitioners would attend this event. This might be an event that occurs once every millennium in the entire Donghua domain. Those who stand at the pinnacle of the cultivation world will definitely go witness his tribulation. Li Changxing smiled and said, Who would miss anyone overcoming 3 tribulations? Even the domain chief would attend this event. Who is this Emperor Shi? Yi Futian asked curiously. Since when did the Donghua domain have such a powerful figure? Emperor Shi had cultivated for years, and had already stepped into the pinnacle of the Runhuang level a long time ago. He had been cultivating on the Turtle Deity Island, in the Divine Ocean continent. The reason why this continent is named the Divine Ocean continent is that apart from the land surrounding the continent tile, the space surrounding the continent tiles is almost all sea. There are countless islands in the Divine Ocean, and the Turtle Deity Island is the most ancient among them. According to what I know, even before I was born, Emperor Shi was already Emperor Shi now, the pinnacle of Renhuangs, and had already been cultivating on the Turtle Deity Island, Li Changxing said. he himself had cultivated for numerous years, so one could imagine just how long Emperor Shi had been famous. Futian nodded. It seemed like Emperor Shi was a top virtuoso who had been cultivating for a long time. Now he was finally going to experience 3 tribulations. Is the tribulation this time going to be dangerous? Futian asked. When a practitioner steps into the saint plane, he will have to overcome the tribulation of saints. He will abandon his human body and soul and enter the saint plane as a superhuman being. As for the 3 tribulations, the practitioner will be leaving his saint body and soul in preparation for stepping into the God level. The 3 tribulations are extremely dangerous. They are far more lethal than the tribulations of saints. He could be vanquished by the order of the Great Path if he were just a little careless, Li Changxing said. Futian was a little shocked. He did not expect that stepping into the God level would involve great danger. No wonder there were so few people in the entire world who were at the God level. The collapse of the heavenly path had created a barrier to all practitioners trying to enter the path. I initially intended for you to cultivate in the Wuxia watchtower for some time. However, witnessing Emperor Shi overcoming tribulations is also a very rare opportunity. You will get to witness this only once every millennium, so I hope you won't miss it and come along, said the Millet Emperor. Understood. Futian nodded. He would certainly not want to miss an opportunity like this. Like what the Millet Emperor said, opportunities like these came only once every 1,000 years. Furthermore, he would also get to see the virtuosos from various places in the Donghua domain. This time, there might be many powerful figures gathering at the Turtle Deity Island to witness the tribulation. This time, we might also meet people from the manor of the domain chief. If we encounter them, we can try to make an acquaintance with them and prepare you for joining them in the future, the Millet Emperor said again. He was already helping Futian plan for his future. Futian nodded lightly. Was he going to join the manor of the domain chief? If he did join the manor of the Donghua domain chief, he would face significantly less danger in the future. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1988. The Divine Ocean Continent. Chapter 1988. The Divine Ocean Continent. The Divine Prefecture had countless continents. As one of the 18 domains in the Divine Prefecture, the Donghua domain similarly consisted of many continents. The Divine Ocean Continent was one of the more unique continents. This continent was not large, and was not one of the main continents. It could only be considered medium-sized. It usually did not have a strong sense of presence, so not many people from the Donghua domain knew about it. On Turtle Deity Island in the Divine Ocean Continent, there lived a pinnacle existence, Emperor Shi. Now, news from Turtle Deity Island spread, claiming that Emperor Shi would face 3 tribulations. This news spread rapidly, first in the Divine Ocean Continent, and then to various other continents, until it reached the Donghua domain. In an instant, the Divine Ocean Continent, which usually did not garner the attention of the masses, became the focus of the entire Donghua domain. Right now, in the skies above the Divine Ocean Continent, people were constantly traversing. Cultivators from various continents had rushed over. It was not just top forces like the Wuxia watchtower. Cultivators from many surrounding continents also came, who did not want to witness such a rare occasion. These were divine tribulations, the stuff of legends. Very few people had witnessed one before. Yet alone the continents around the area, even among the continents in the entire Divine Prefecture, it was a rare sight. Now, such an opportunity had appeared in the Divine Ocean Continent. To witness Emperor Shi facing a divine tribulation, even though it was just the first tribulation, was still enough to attract the attention of the world. Right now a group of cultivators descended from the sky. It was as though they had appeared immediately from beyond the horizon. This caused many people around to look over in their direction. The people around wondered which continent these figures of top forces had arrived from. Such speed could not be detected by eyes or will. The people who had come were Millet Emperor and the other members of the Wangshan watchtower. They brought along cultivators from the watchtower, as well as Yi Futian's group. "We have arrived," Millet Emperor announced as he stood there. Yi Futian looked down below. As expected, there was a vast ocean beneath them. In the divine ocean, there were many islands. However, the islands were covered with buildings, as though they were island cities. They appeared somewhat similar to the city of Qingzhou in Donghai, where Yi Futian grew up. Of course, Donghai was far from being comparable to the divine ocean. Yi Futian's current cultivation plane was far superior when compared to his cultivation plane when he was a youth. Thus, the two places felt oddly similar to him. After all, his vision and will could cover a huge area. Although the distance between the island cities was vast, his vision could still span the island cities. "He is so fast," Yi Futian thought to himself as he glanced at Millet Emperor. The speed of a top cultivator was too frightening. Yi Futian felt as though they had transcended time and space while they were traversing in the sky. From the Dongxiao continent to the Divine Ocean continent, they had traversed over countless continents in between these 2 points. However, Yi Futian felt as though they had not taken very long to get here. This was the speed of a giant figure. "We still do not know when the hour of reckoning will be. All of you can explore the Divine Ocean continent on your own. When the day of reckoning comes, head straight for Turtle Deity Island," Millet Emperor explained to them. The crowd nodded in acknowledgement. Millet Emperor then took a step forward, and his figure immediately disappeared without a trace. He went off on his own to find a place to cultivate. Although the news had come from Turtle Deity Island, the day of reckoning had yet to be determined. They had arrived early, as they did not want to miss it. Under such circumstances, they could not go to Turtle Deity Island and disturb the people there. As of now, outside of Turtle Deity Island, many cultivators had already gathered. "I plan to head over to a place near Turtle Deity Island to cultivate. What do you all plan to do?" Li Chongqing asked with a smile. "I will go to Turtle Deity Island," Zhongchan replied. The members of the Wangshan watchtower each had their own plans in mind. "I will go and take a look around the area," Yi Futian responded with a smile. "All right, then we will part ways for now. See you all again on Turtle Deity Island," Li Chongqing replied with a laugh. The cultivators then dispersed and went about their own business. However, Yi Futian's group remained. Aside from Yi Futian, Goddess Donglai and Alchemy Emperor had also come. Xia Qingyu and Zifeng, and the others were also with them. Goddess Donglai did not leave, instead choosing to follow Yi Futian. She did not plan to go her own way. The incident on Turtle Deity Island caused quite a stir. Members from various forces had all come. The cultivators of the Great Yin ancient royal family would certainly arrive, and the members of other forces. The person with the highest cultivation around Yi Futian was Beigong Ao. She did not feel secure about this. "Let's go," said Yi Futian as his figure advanced. They traversed through the sky and passed over island cities. The sound of huge waves could be heard constantly from the divine ocean below. The ocean breeze swept against Yi Futian's body, causing his white robes to flutter and his silver hair to dance in the wind. Yi Futian missed this sensation. Many images surfaced in his mind of the times he spent with his teacher Hua Fenglu and Jiyu when they traveled across Donghai. He did not know how they were now. He had been in the Divine Prefecture for some years now. Were they all right in the original realm? People kept traversing in the sky above the Divine Ocean. Many people passed by beside Yi Futian's group. However, most cultivators would mind their own business. This time cultivators had come from all over. No one knew each other's backgrounds, so they would not easily go looking for trouble. Right then, not far above from where Yi Futian's group was, another group of cultivators was traveling at extremely high speeds. One of their members swept a glance at Yi Futian's group, and then a voice called out, saying, "It is a demonic phoenix." The person who had spoken had a sinister look in his eyes. He swept a glance over at Zifeng, revealing a look of interest. He could tell at a glance that Zifeng's true form was the divine bird, the phoenix. Seemingly sensing the other party's gaze, Zifeng's eyes lit up with frightening flames of the Great Path. The aura of the Great Path seemed to radiate from within her pupils. Flames of the Great Path, invaded the eyes of the other party. However, a strange light flashed past in those sinister eyes. He allowed Zifeng's will to invade his own. With a sparkle in his eyes, he seemed to have sensed something. He then laughed and said, "What an incredible phoenix! Such a pity. It would have been better if she did not already have a master." As he said this, he glanced over Yi Futian and the others. This demonic beast was following this group of people. She must already have a master. If she was a masterless phoenix, he could tame her. "Keep moving. Don't dawdle," reminded someone beside him. The other party nodded his head. Their group advanced even faster, disappearing from the view of Yi Futian's group in an instant. Yi Futian frowned slightly. Although the other party had not done anything that was overstepping boundaries, his tone had clearly been frivolous. They have top figures among them. They should be a top-level overlord force, Goddess Donglai said softly. When Yi Futian heard her say this, he was rendered speechless. He never imagined that a group of people they happened to encounter in the sky above the Divine Ocean continent was a superpower-level force. "Can you tell which force they are from?" Zifeng asked. She was clearly unhappy. She was very dissatisfied with the look in the other party's eyes and their attitude. "Zifeng, they have not done anything. Don't go looking for trouble," said Goddess Donglai gently. Although they were under the protection of the Millet Emperor, it would still be best for them not to offend superpowers, so as to not make enemies for him. Zifeng nodded her head. Although she was not pleased about it, she did not pursue the matter. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1989 Story. Chapter 1989. Story. Some people were using boats to traverse the Divine Ocean. Many boats were floating on the Divine Ocean. On one of the boats, Yi Futian was lying down quietly. Xiaqing Yuan sat behind him, and Black Wind Condor was looking all around beside him. On the other boats behind them were the other cultivators. Goddess Donglai, Zifeng as well as Bai Mu were together. Beigong Ao and Beigong Shuang were on the same boat. They all rowed boats as they followed behind Yi Futian. "It is rare for us to have such a cozy time," commented Beigong Ao as he admired the scenery in the distance. The sky merged with the horizon. The shadows of ancient buildings could faintly be seen in the sky. They seemed to be mirages. "Just take a rest," said Yi Futian in front with a smile. His hands were behind his head, and he was very relaxed. It was indeed rare for them to have such a moment. For many years he had always been cultivating. He had never stopped and did not dare to slack. There was not much meaning for them to find a place to cultivate on this journey in the Divine Ocean continent. They might as well take this opportunity to relax and forget about cultivating for a while. It felt very nice wandering around on the boundless Divine Ocean, going wherever the wind brought them. When they lifted their heads, they could occasionally see people passing over them in the sky above. For them to be able to see people passing over them on the vast ocean from time to time, one could imagine how many people had come to the Divine Ocean continent and were heading to Turtle Deity Island. "I wonder what it will look like when I break through the next plane and face a tribulation," Yi Futian mumbled to himself. He believed that one day he would face a divine tribulation. If that day comes for you, the Divine Prefecture might be shocked, and the whole world might come to celebrate it, a gentle voice said beside Yi Futian. Yi Futian raised his head slightly and saw a beautiful face enter his field of view. Xiaqing Yuan lowered her head and looked at him. Yi Futian's words made her look forward to such a day. If he were to face a divine tribulation in the future, what a sight would that be like? "Or I might make the whole world my enemy, and the members of the Divine Prefecture will all come to kill me," Yi Futian said. He did not know what the future would be like. As his cultivation improved, he should get closer to revealing the secrets of his life. He did not know how the Divine Prefecture would react once it was revealed. Would they celebrate, or would they come to kill him? "That won't happen," said Xiaqing Yuan seriously as she looked him in his eyes. "Who knows?" said Yi Futian with a smile. No one could predict what his future path would be like. He could only walk it one step at a time. Xiaqing Yuan looked at him. She knew that Yi Futian always kept secrets about him that he himself was not sure of. Even if all of creation were to become your enemy, I would still be by your side, whispered Xiaqing Yuan. She did not look at Yi Futian. She was staring far off into the distance. Would such a day come? Yi Futian looked at her beautiful face and revealed a gentle smile. This world had treated him well. Although he had encountered many dangers on his journey of cultivation and had made many enemies, he also had many people close to him, as well as seniors who remained standing on his side, supporting him up until now. The sound of waves constantly beating against the boat kept sounding. The boat floated along with the waves. A light shroud surrounded the little boat and prevented the ocean water from entering the boat. They seemed to float along the currents without any direction, not knowing where they would end up. Yi Futian took a nap. It had been a long while since he had slept. Cultivators absorbed the spiritual qi from all creation. They did not need to eat or sleep, especially once they became saints. Hence, Yi Futian rarely slept at all. Only when he heard sounds did Yi Futian wake up from his nap on the boat. He opened his eyes. His gaze was somewhat lax. He looked up and saw that Xiaqing Yuan was still sitting there with her head lowered as she looked at him. Seeing Yi Futian opening his eyes, she shifted her gaze. She had an embarrassed look on her face, as though she had been discovered peeping. With a smile, Yi Futian asked, "What is that sound?" "We have reached the coast. It seems to be a training ground. There are quite a number of people up ahead," said Xiaqing Yuan softly as she lowered her head and looked at him. Yi Futian sat up and looked ahead. On the coast nearby, many cultivators were gathered. There seemed to be patterns carved on the cliff by the ocean. Many people were standing on the reef by the coast and looking at the cliff face. Yi Futian's will swept out. He saw that the patterns were drawings of a human figure. The figure was practicing axe techniques. When his will invaded the drawings, the figure seemed to move. It contained an extremely powerful aura of the Great Path of Thunder, causing the might of the Great Path of Thunder to emanate from the cliff face. Uttered Yi Futian as he revealed a strange expression. He actually discovered that the drawing was extraordinary. The axe technique was very powerful. When his will invaded the drawing, he witnessed an extremely frightening scene. Could it be that there was a fateful encounter of the Great Path located here? If that was so, Yi Futian's luck was quite good. It is not just this cliff face. Take a look around, said Beigong Ao with a bizarre expression. His gaze shifted across the entire cliff face along the coast. He discovered that aside from this complete drawing, the surrounding cliffs were covered in markings. The marks extended very far. It was as though the entire coast was carved with these marks. This drawing was carved after the person completed his training. The person must have had an epiphany, commented Yi Futian with a nod after he glanced at the marks on the cliff. They continued riding their boats as they moved on. Occasionally, some people would pass by and land when they saw this scene. On a huge boulder on the reef, there was a young couple. Their cultivation was not very high. They were still at the sage plain. "May I ask what this place is?" Beigong Ao asked the two of them when Yi Futian's group passed by them. The two of them glanced over at Beigong Ao and the others. They immediately understood that Yi Futian's group might be powerful cultivators from abroad. The youth bowed slightly and said, "This place was the training ground of Thunder Punishing Skylord." "Thunder Punishing Skylord?" exclaimed Beigong Ao with a surprised look. It seemed that it was another incredible figure. The youth nodded. Back when Thunder Punishing Skylord was at the upper-level Renhuang Plain, he headed to Turtle Deity Island to seek teachings. He found Emperor Shi. However, Emperor Shi did not teach him, instead asking him to find a place to carve his way. Emperor Shi told him to forget everything and to stop cultivating the great path of all things. Thunder Punishing Skylord came here and carved his way into the cliff face for 30 years before he managed to reach enlightenment. The youth continued. After Thunder Punishing Skylord broke through to the next plane, he headed over to Turtle Deity Island to ask Emperor Shi to accept him as a pupil. Emperor Shi did not see him, claiming that it was his own fateful encounter, and was unrelated to Emperor Shi. However, Thunder Punishing Skylord always considered himself a pupil of Emperor Shi. This place was his previous training ground and has not been erased. Rumor has it that within the cliff, there is a treasure that he left behind. However, it is just a rumor. I do not know whether it is actually true. Impressive, exclaimed Beigong Ao with respect. Both Emperor Shi and thunder-punishing Skylord were awe-inspiring. Both of them were extraordinary figures. Emperor Shi gave pointers without asking for anything in return. Thunder-punishing Skylord also recognized Emperor Shi as his teacher. Even though he had already reached enlightenment, he still treated Emperor Shi as his teacher. He also did not erase everything he had carved here, leaving it behind for the generations to come. It might be that he was touched by Emperor Shi's guidance, and hoped that these markings would be beneficial for other cultivators. Yi Futian was also secretly impressed. This time, when Emperor Shi faced his tribulation, thunder-punishing Skylord might also be there. Yi Futian never imagined that such a giant figure would have such a story to him. It was amazing. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.